Welcome to Future Talk. The world is facing some pretty big problems these days, and some people aren't willing to sit back and hope that somebody else will come up with the solutions. There are lots of grassroots groups seeking new approaches to dealing with today's major issues, and some of them are right here in Silicon Valley. My guests today represent two of these groups. Sam Hahn is one of the co-founders of Program for the Future, which is based on the ideas of the late Silicon Valley pioneer Doug Engelbart. Their mission is to find new ways to leverage our collective intelligence and improve our collaboration with each other in order to solve big problems more effectively. Mei-Lin Fung is co-founder of Franchise for Humanity and believes that social innovation is the key to harnessing technology for the good of humanity. She was one of the pioneers of customer relationship management. A bit later in the program, we'll show some video taken at a recent Franchise for Humanity conference at Stanford University. But let's start with Program for the Future. Sam, exactly what are you trying to accomplish with Program for the Future?
So Program for the Future is intended to further the collaboration and collective intelligence vision of Doug Engelbart. Doug, when he was 25, basically decided to look at how he could most effectively provide the planet and civilization with tools that could help us address very large planetary scale problems.
Now, when you talk about collective intelligence, what does that mean? Is that just using the intelligence we already have more efficiently, or are we talking about some new type of intelligence?
So the definition I like to use is intelligence is a way that you can actually achieve a goal or solve a problem. And so when you apply it collectively, you want to make sure that the problem or the goal that you attain is qualitatively better than any proper subset of the people that are actually involved. So you really want to make sure that the team itself provides an optimum, however you define optimum, solution to a problem.
So how do you do that? Does that mean like you're brainstorming and everybody is contributing their ideas and the best ideas come to the surface?
No, because the common notions of collective intelligence are very simple, and we cannot just say, oh, well, we're going to listen to everyone and assume that we're going to come up with the best solution. The best solution has to be evaluated on its own terms, whether or not you've got a fixed set of metrics or whether you've got some, checklist of items that you're actually going to verify for a given solution. And so it's not as simple as just having everyone speak their mind and be heard.
Is there some specific problem that you're focusing on?
Actually, the way Doug was going about this problem is not by saying he wants to focus on a specific problem. He can see a whole litany of problems. If you look at the Millennium Project, they've already cataloged at least 16 or 17 of these problems, from hunger to water quality to overpopulation. So many problems have already been inventoried and cataloged, and we're already aware of what they are. What Doug was trying to do is say, for us to make reasonable progress on any of those problems, we have to be able to find out how we can work together better. So rather than specifically zoning in on one problem, he was saying, what are the nature of the collaborations that we need to actually achieve? So he's looking at how we manage information, how we manage plans, how we look at agreement, how we look at alignment, how we look at, just remote collaboration as well. So all of that plays, and all of those things are how we want to be leveraging some technology, not just in a particular problem.
So you're basically talking about creating a process which can be applied to any problem.
You could say that. It's a process as well as a set of tools, because once you have a process, you want to then optimize pieces of that process, and technology usually comes in and helps you optimize some aspect of it.
Now, what do you actually do in Program for the Future? How do you know if you're making any progress toward your goals?
So Program for the Future is a very long-term perspective. The first of our events, held in 2008, in which Mei-Lin was also an organizer, a key organizer, was just to say, of the vision that Doug really set out to attain, how much have we actually come, how far have we actually come, okay? So it's actually a nice anecdote I have from that conference now, that when I asked Doug this very question, he flippantly but almost seriously said, we've gone almost 3.6% of the way towards the vision that he actually set out for himself when he was 25 years old.
Well, when he talked about a vision, what was his vision? Was it just to define a process for solving problems, or was he talking about a vision in which problems were solved?
So I can say There's actually both involved in what his vision is, because his vision was not just to come up with a theory or a model. It was actually to practice that theory, to build the tools, collect the teams, and then actually then evolve those tools, but not just the tools themselves. It was to evolve the way we use those tools and the way our beliefs, our values, our practices, procedures, protocols, contracts, communication styles, all have to keep up with the advances in technology. Okay? See, if we don't change ourselves, then technology grows by leaps and bounds, but we're still operating on perhaps hundreds of years old methods and practices.
Well, you mentioned values. Are there people involved in Program for the Future sharing some type of common values which enables them to work together?
Because Doug represented a very lengthy, let's say, he was working for several decades on this. We've picked out in Program for the Future 8 key principles out of Doug's work that really drive Program for the Future. They involve approaching problems in a bootstrapping way. That's one of the principles.
What does that mean?
And by bootstrapping, it really means that every iteration, every attempt to solve a problem is almost by necessity imperfect. But what's important is that you keep new iterations, you keep trying new things, and that you learn from each iteration, and that you apply that learning back to what you're actually doing initially. So today, the common word for that is agile. If you are in the software development business, agile principles embody those practices. But Doug was doing this way back in the early 60s.
Now, what does Program for the Future actually do? Do you have projects that you're working on, that you have meetings and you check how you're doing on them, or do you get together and discuss philosophical principles? What is the actual effort going on in the group?
Okay. So right now, and there are multiple threads going on, but one of the key threads that's most easy to grasp is that 2018 would be 50 years after the first demonstration that Doug showed of his hypertext, his word processing, his outline processing, his mouse technologies. So we're thinking in 50 years after Doug showed his first demo, what could we do? We being those of us involved in Program for the Future and those that we would like to recruit to come work with us. What kind of a demonstration could we create between now and 2018, given that we have 5 years to do this, that would then show the world new, fabulous ways that technology can be employed, can be leveraged, that would then be the seed for another 3 or 4 decades of innovation beyond 2018.
How big is this group? Do you have many members, or how do you judge how it's doing?
Okay, so right now it is a small group. Right now we have on the order of about a dozen people that are working on this, some very, very seriously, meeting every week, some peripherally and just providing support. So what we're doing is coming up with a plan for not only the structure for this challenge, but specific innovations that we would like to pursue. One of our members, Alan, is actually positing that we do something as ambitious as space travel as a challenge. Okay, now it sounds very, very challenging, but if you then take a look at what NASA is doing, NASA is already involved in some of that, but he's just taking that idea and going one step further and saying, how could we use that motivating project as a way to showcase how we collaborate, how we recruit people internationally, how we then bring in multidisciplinary efforts together, and then show that we can actually produce something in 2018. So that's one of our examples.
And we're going to continue this conversation in a little bit, but now I'd like to turn to Mei Lin Feng.